This is topic number 4, which is related with chapter 19 of the textbook. So in this topic, we will discuss about the construction safety and health and equipment maintenance. So, importance of safety. Compared with the hired workforce, construction accounts for far more accident and fatalities. It means that the rate of construction accidents in the rates of accidents in the construction industry is quite high compared with the number of people who are hired in the construction industry. So, and this trend is true in many countries. The total annual cost, direct and indirect, of construction accidents is huge. So not only there are losses of life and injuries to the human being, there are also related losses in terms of the costs, which are quite huge due to the construction accidents, or which also happens due to the poor safety management on the construction sites. Therefore, we can start this discussion of this topic by the mentioning of Occupational Safety and Health Act of 1970 in the United States. This act established specific safety and health requirements for virtually all industries, including construction. As a result of this act, Occupational Safety and Health Administration organization was established, which is responsible for developing and enforcing regulations for the implementation of this act. So this act is about all types of industries, virtually all types of industries, which includes the construction industry. As a result of the construction accidents, there are several types of losses. So several types of losses. So these losses can be categorized into the humanitarian losses and the financial losses. So humanitarian and financial are the two major reasons for construction management to be seriously concerned about safety. So as far as the humanitarian losses is concerned, everybody is understandably distressed when a fellow employee is killed or disabled. So the humanitarian basis for safety is apparent. On the other hand, there are financial losses as well. So one of the financial losses to a construction company is the payment of the workers' compensation. Okay, and that workers' compensation is paid through the insurance premiums. So if a construction company will have a poor safety record, the ability of that construction company to get the workers' compensation insurance premium, to get the workers' compensation insurance also becomes difficult. So as it is based on the firm's accident rate. Public liability, property damage, and equipment insurance rates are also affected by the accident rates. So more are the accident rates, more will be the cost related with the property damage and equipment insurance. It has been shown that a construction firm can lose its competitive bidding position simply because the effect of high insurance premiums resulting from poor safety record. So, as I have just previously mentioned, from a poor safety record, there may be high insurance premiums. And when there is high insurance premiums, the bid price for the construction company may be quite high. So that construction company may lose their bidding competitive advantage as a result of the poor safety record. So there are other costs, of course, which are difficult to estimate as well. So what are these costs? So for example, the costs associated with an accident include the monetary value of the lost project time while the accident is investigated. So it means that when the accident happens, the work on the construction project stops. So the time is lost, and the damages are repaired. Okay, the time required to replace critical materials and equipment and to train the replacement workers, as well as the effect of those portions of the project not directly involved in the accident. So as a result of the construction accidents, many areas of the construction are affected. OSHA. So OSHA is the US Occupational Safety and Health Administration. This organization has produced a comprehensive set of safety and health regulations, inspection procedures, and record keeping requirements. So the guidelines of OSHA are not only used in the USA, but these guidelines are also quite helpful for other countries as well. This is the for one of the sample of the some guidelines from OSHA, specifically about the penalties. So if some of the violations of the safety occurs on the construction sites, so these guidelines, among other recommendations, they also establish some of the penalties as well. So for example, for some willful or repeated violation, there may be some penalty. There may be some routine or serious violation. There may be some penalty for violation. So by putting these penalties for the violations, they may try to control the construction accidents, or these penalties may help to reduce the number of construction accidents on the site. Of course, penalties are not the only measure to control the construction accidents. Some other measures, such as some preventive measures, are also necessary. So we will talk about those preventive measures in the following slides. Okay, so we can start from the description of the safety programs. So in order to implement the safety, there should be some kind of program regarding safety that should be implemented or applied on the construction site. So safety program is needed to minimize accidents. So the purpose is to minimize accidents. Not only minimize accidents, some organizations try to eliminate accidents as a result of their stringent safety programs. So safety program is needed to minimize accidents and ensure compliance with OSHA and other safety regulations. Especially if instead of OSHA, if you have some other organization in your country which implements the safety regulations, so we have to comply with the regulations for that organization. Active support of top management is needed. So for any safety program to work well, the top management support may be needed. The workers or the supervisors or the superintendents on the site may try to complete the project in a quick manner, or maybe they do not want to over budget the project as well. So in achieving those time constraints and the budget constraints, so the supervisory staff may sometimes overlook the safety requirements. So in those situations, if the role of the top management is to enforce the safety regulations, so then safety programs can be enforced very well. So that's why an active support of the top management is needed to enforce the safety programs well on any construction project. Job site supervisors have traditionally neglected safety in their haste to get the job done on time and within budget. So this is what I have just explained. Only when supervisors are convinced by higher management that safety is equally as important as production will the benefits of an effective safety programs will be achieved. So that this sentence then supports this point that the active support of top management is needed. An effective safety program must instill a sense of safety consciousness in every employee. So this is important. A safety consciousness should be there in every employee on the construction project. So only then that safety program can be effective. So, although there are many ingredients in a comprehensive safety program, some of the major elements are like as listed below. Okay, so what are those elements? A formal safety training program for all new employees. This is mandatory. In many countries, this is mandatory to have a formal safety training program for new employees. A periodic refresher training for each worker. So for those employees who already have their safety programs, but for them, there should be a periodic refresher training. A formal supervisory safety training program for all supervisors. So supervisors or the superintendents who guide the workers on the construction site, there should be some specific safety training programs. So safety training is very, very important in the safety program. A program of regular site visits by safety personnel to review and control job hazards. So construction sites are relatively quite dynamic. So a lot of changes are happening day by day on the construction sites. So therefore, due to those changes on the construction sites, safety hazards also change from time to time. So therefore, a program of regular site visits by the safety personnel is very useful to implement an effective safety program. Provision of adequate personal protective equipment, first aid equipment, and trained emergency personnel. So it is quite obvious. Personal protective equipment, that such as the safety vest, safety boots, hard hat, and many other personal protective equipment should be must on the construction site. Of course, in case of accidents or injury, first aid is necessary. And there should be an availability of the trained emergency personnel who can help in the case of the accidents. An established procedure for the emergency evacuation of injured workers. So some procedures should be in place in case of emergency to evacuate the injured workers. Provisions of for maintaining safety records and reporting accidents in compliance with the OSHA requirements or any other requirement, any other department who oversees the construction accidents cases. So safety records and the reporting of the accidents in an organized manner is quite important as well, because the organization or the construction company should find the root causes of the accidents in a very accurate manner. So since we talked about the insurance, and then the insurance cost, minimization of the insurance cost is important for the competitors, for the contractors' competitiveness. So a construction contractor's cost of insurance is largely determined by the construction company's accident experience. Some of the factors considered by an insurer are the company's record of accidents and safety violations. So, if the company's record of safety of the accidents and safety violations is worse, then the insurance cost will increase. Adequacy of the company's safety program, including testing of employees for skill qualification as well as for drug and alcohol use, training of workers, existence of a company safety plan and evidence of its enforcement, the system for accident reporting, and adequacy of the workers' personal protective equipment. So, in nutshell, if the company's record for safety management is good, then the insurance cost by the company can be decreased. Job site appearance and the evidence of proper equipment maintenance. It also this factor is also considered by the insurer, who is going to offer the construction company the insurance plan. Some indicators of unsafe and risky construction operations. On the other hand, an insurance may also look for some of the unsafe practices by the construction company if they are present in the company. For example, failure to follow required safety procedures. So we will talk about several safety procedures later on, whether these safety procedures are being followed in the company. Poor housekeeping at the construction site, for example, cleanliness and proper placement of the materials and equipment on the site, proper storage. So these are some of the factors for the housekeeping. Failure to use necessary personal protective equipment by the employee. So the insurer will see that whether the workers on the site are using the personal protective equipment or not. Evidence of inadequate worker training, particularly on hazardous operations. So they will check whether the workers have adequate training to work on the site, and especially for those operations which are carrying some danger element, hazardous operations. A high rate of employee turnover. So this is also an indirect factor for the poor safety record. If the employees are changing quite a lot on the construction site. Safety procedures. So now let's talk about some of the safety procedures which may be adopted. So most serious construction accidents involve construction equipment operations and trench and embankment failure, falls from elevated positions, collapse of temporary structures and formwork, or the failure of structures under the construction. So the care must be followed especially in those areas where most accidents occur, most serious accidents occur. So safety regulations should be specific in these areas, and special management attention should be devoted to the safety of these activities. The following list of major safety precautions should be helpful as a general guide. So In the safety procedures, first of all, we will look at the journal safety procedures, then we will look at the equipment operations, construction plant, excavations, construction of structures, marine or over water construction. So first of all, journal. So, good housekeeping on a project site is both a safety measure and an indicator of good project supervision. So, as I said before, good housekeeping means storing the things on the site in an organized manner. So, as an example, if for example the lumber or the woods used formwork and other material is lying around a work area, that will increase the likelihood of falls and puncture wounds. So these are some of the things which are related with the general safety procedures. Some of the safety procedures are now considered for the are looked at for the equipment operations. So for example, require operators and mechanics to use steps and handholds when mounting the equipment. Okay, so the operators should use steps and handholds when mounting the equipment, when mounting on the equipment. So this is for their safety. Utilize guides or signal persons when the operator's visibility is limited or when there is a danger to nearby workers. So in those situations when workers on the site are communicating with each other, then some kind of sign posting, giving signals to each other in the form of some flags or some other symbols may be very useful. Because the work, the conditions on the construction site may be very noisy as well. So if even if they are communicating with each other with some communicating devices such as the mobile phones, but even in those situations, some signaling communication method is better. Because that signaling communication method may avoid some of the miscommunications. Backup alarms or guides must be used when equipment operates in reverse. Okay, so normally on the construction sites, when the equipment is operating in the reverse, so then that equipment normally emits some alarms or provide some warnings. Okay. Also, the exercise extreme caution and comply with safety regulations when operating near high voltage lines. In case of accidental contact with high voltage line, so there are guidelines that the operator should attempt to move the equipment enough to break the contact. If this is not possible, then the operator should remain on the equipment until the line can be de-energized. Then make sure that the machines are equipped with required safety features and that operators use seat belts when provided. So safety features on the machines should be used wherever they are available, and also the safety those machines should be selected which have the enhanced safety features on the machines. Use care when operating equipment on side slopes to prevent overturning. So for example, if a truck is just at some of the side slopes, then there may be a chance that the truck may overturn because maybe the ground near the side slope may not be very stable. So therefore there should be extreme care when operating the equipment on the side slopes to prevent the overturning. When operating cranes, Be extremely careful not to exceed the safe limit loads for the operating radius and boom position. So for the cranes, for the given cranes, there is a safe loading mentioned on the in the manual of the cranes, and then that safe loading is also with respect to the radius of the boom as well. So use of the electronic load indicators when available should also be uh, uh, implemented. Do not allow workers to ride on equipment unless proper seating is provided. So the workers should not casually ride on the equipment unless there is a proper place for them to stand or there is a proper place for them to sit on that equipment. Uh, oh, Haul roads must be properly maintained. Items to check include in those haul roads are: it is the condition of the road surface, whether there are any holes, slippery surface, there is an excess dust, the factors related to the visibilities, especially on the curves and obstacles, intersections and dust, and adequate width for vehicles to pass unless there is a one-way road. Park the equipment with the brake set and blade or bowl grounded. Okay, so whenever the equipment should be parked, it should be parked in their parking mode. Okay, so which means that the equipment should not be parked in some like kind of like operating mode. So it should be parked in the safest way possible. And of course, the ignition key should be removed at the end of the work for the safety purpose. Equipment used for land clearing must be equipped with overhead and rear canopy protection. Workers engaged in clearing must be protected from the hazards of the irritant and toxic plants and instructed in the first-hand treatment for such hazards. So this is also for the protection of the workers, that there should be some overhead canopy for their protection when they are using that equipment, or especially for the land clearing. Continuing with the safety procedures for the equipment operations, when hauling heavy or oversized loads on highways, make sure that the loads are properly secured and covered if necessary. Slow moving and oversized vehicles must use required markings and signals to warn other traffic. Take positive action to ensure that equipment under repair cannot be accidentally operated, because equipment under repair will be a faulty equipment, and of course use of a faulty equipment is not a safe practice. Utilize blocking, cribbing or other positive support when employees must work under heavy loads supported by cables, jacks or hydraulic systems. So if the workers are working under the heavy load, so there should be some protection for the workers in the form of some blocking and cribbing and or other positive supports. It should be ensured that any guards or safety devices removed during equipment repair are promptly replaced. And shut down the engines and do not allow smoking during refueling. So this is also one of the safety procedure when using the equipment. Okay, some of the safety procedures about the construction plant. Set equipment containing hot or flammable fluids on firm foundations to prevent overturning. So foundations for the equipment should be firm to prevent their overturning. Clearly mark high temperature lines and containers to prevent burns. Be especially careful of live steam. Provide fire extinguishers and other required safety equipment. So, aggregate bins and batching plants should be emptied before performing major repairs. When electrical equipment is being repaired, shut off and tag electrical circuits. So remember that all of these are the safety procedures. Ensure that wire, rope and cable are of the proper size and strength, well maintained and inspected at least weekly. Now some of the safety procedures related with the excavations. The location of underground utilities and other hazards must be determined before starting an excavation. Contact utility companies and property owners to request that they establish the location of such installations. When utility companies or owners cannot provide this information promptly, the contractor may cautiously proceed with excavations. So underground utilities are one of the very uncertain features which may suddenly occur. So as a first step, we need to contact the utility companies and the property owners to request that if they have such information, they can provide it. If they cannot provide it, then of course in those situations, the contractor have to proceed very cautiously. However, in this situation, the contractor must employ detection equipment or other acceptable means to locate and avoid underground hazards. So therefore, of course, the contractor cannot just go blindly. They should have they should use some equipment for the detection of the underground utilities. The sides of excavation must be properly shored or sloped to the angle of repose to prevent cave-ins. So if there are excavations, of course, in those excavations, some shoring, that means some support to the sides should be provided, or on if the support side is not provided, then the sides should be sloped to less than their angle of repose for preventing the cave-ins. So angle of repose is that angle by which some soil can maintain their natural slope. So it is called as the angle of repose. So for cohesive soils, the angle of repose is high. For granular soils, the angle of repose is normally less. OSHA regulations require that the banks over 5 feet or 1.5 meter must be shored. So you cannot have an excavation more than at least 1.5 meter without shoring. These excavations should be cut back to the stable slope, otherwise protected. Regulations also require that the protective systems, sloping, benching, shoring or shielding for excavation over 20 feet deep must be designed by registered professional engineers. So a deep excavation such as like 20 feet deep excavations or more should be designed by some registered professional engineers. When workers are required to enter a trench excavation 4 feet or more in depth, a stairway, ladder, ramp or other safe means of egress must be located in such a manner as to require no more than 25 feet or 7.62 meter of lateral travel by any worker in the trench, so that in the case of emergency they can escape from that excavated site. So any ladder or some exit route should be within 25 feet of the worker's place. Avoid the operation of equipment near the top edge of an excavation because this increases the chance of slope failure. So because that the load of that equipment can cause the slope to fail. The storage of materials near the top edge of an excavation, vibration, and the presence of water also increase the chance of slope failure. When these conditions cannot be avoided, additional measures must be taken to increase the slope stability. So when it is necessary that the equipment should be placed on the edges of the slope, then the shoring for the slope should be provided in such a way that that shoring is able to take up the load of the extra material or extra equipment which is placed near the edge of the slopes. If workers are required to enter the excavation, no spoil or other materials may be stored within 2 feet of the edge of the excavation. So, such as these loose materials cannot be stored within the edge of the material, because there, for that loose material or for the spoil, there is a chance that that material may fall into the excavated area. So this is due to that reason it cannot, that loose material cannot be stored within 2 feet of the edge of the excavation. Ensure that the workers are not allowed under loads being handled by excavators or hoists. And watch out for the buried lines and containers when excavating. Possible hazards in those situations include some toxic and flammable gases, electricity, and collapse of side slopes caused by sudden release of liquids. If a gas line is ruptured and catches fire, get personnel and flammable materials away from the fire and have the gas turned off as quickly as possible. And in those situations, there should not be any attempt to extinguish the fire, because an accumulation of the unburned gas, it may pose greater threat than does a fire in those situations. So the effort should be to remove the supply of the gas in those situations rather than try to extinguish the fires in the case of the gas explosion. So safety procedures about the construction of structures. Properly guard all openings above the ground level. So if there are any openings above the ground level, they should be guarded, because there is a chance that people or equipment may fall through those openings. Provide guard rails, safety lines, safety belts, and or safety nets for workers on the scaffolds or steelworks. Ensure that the temporary structures are properly designed, constructed, and braced. And special caution should be exercised in high-rise concrete construction. Forms must be of adequate strength and properly braced. The rate of pour must be maintained at or below design limits. Shoring and reshoring must be adequately braced and not removed until the concrete has developed required strength. So in the case of the placing of the concrete, the rate of concrete pour should be also be adequate. It should not, the rate of pouring should not be too high as well, so that it may even provide some impact into the shoring, and then that shoring may fail in those situations. Okay, so lastly, there are some safety procedures about the marine or overwater construction. In marine or overwater construction operations, these types of operations present same kind of hazards, just like as we are doing the construction on the ground, but there are some additional hazards as well. These additional hazards include drowning, slippery surfaces, increased tripping and height hazards, as well as weather and wave action. So major safety precautions are: unless workers can safely step onto vessels, a ramp or safe walkway must be provided. Access ways must be adequately illuminated, free of obstructions, and located clear of the suspended loads. Working areas should have non-slip surfaces, be maintained clear of obstructions. and be equipped with adequate handrails. So these are more or less like a general, quite obvious requirements in the marine construction. So workers or unguarded decks or surfaces over water must wear approved life jackets or buoyant vests. Life rings and a rescue boat must also be available. Workers more than 25 feet above the water surface must be protected by safety belts, safety nets, or similar protective equipment. So these are must, because safety belts will help in the case of accidental fall. Okay, so these were some of the requirements about the safety, but some of the and these safety requirements previously, which we just considered, help avoid the accidents. But in addition to the accidents, there can be some hazards which may be related with the health as well. So health and safety are two separate things. Okay, safety is there, but also as well as health is of the workers is also important. So now we will look at some of the health related issues. So these issues are related to the noise, dust, radiation, toxic materials, heat, and cold. So first of all, noise. So OSHA construction safety and health regulations prescribe maximum noise levels to which workers may be exposed. Okay, so what are those noise levels? So permissible noise levels are a function of the length of exposure and range from 90 decibels to for an 8-hour exposure to 140 decibels for impulse or impact noise. That means if it is an 8 hours exposure, the average level of the noise should not be more than 90 decibels. Or for an impulse or impact noise, it should not be more than 140 decibel of the noise. So of course there are some sound meters which can measure the level of the noise in the areas. So when a satisfactory noise level cannot be attained by engineering controls, personal ear protections must be provided. So if there is a persistent high levels of noises, then it is better to use the ear protection equipments. Use of cab enclosures or construction equipment to protect equipment operators from the equipment noise. So if the personal ear protection instead of a personal ear protection, so for the equipment operators, they can sit in the cabs, in the cabins of the construction equipment, which may also help them protect from the excessive noise from the machines. However, in those situations, although the use of operator enclosures permits an improved operator environment, it also creates a safety hazard as well, because it is difficult for workers outside the enclosures to communicate with the equipment operator. So although we can do some effort to protect from the noise, but on the other hand, it may cause some safety hazard as well. So in those situations, communication with the signaling method may be very convenient. As a result, increased attention must be given to the use of guides, backup alarms, and hand signals if accidents are to be avoided. Okay, so next health hazard is the dust. In addition to creating a safety hazard due to the loss of visibility, dust may be responsible for a number of lung diseases. Silica dust and asbestos dust are particularly dangerous and produce specific lung diseases. These are called as the asbestosis and silicosis. So asbestos dust has also been found to be a cancer-producing agent. As a result, OSHA safety and health standards limit the concentration of dust to which workers may be exposed. So the dust should be controlled because it is a health hazard. So the allowable concentration of the asbestos particle is as would be expected quite. Radiation. For the radiation hazard, we can ionizing radiation is produced by X-ray equipment and by radioactive material. Such radiation may be present on the construction site when X-ray welds, measuring soil density, or performing non-destructive materials testing. So any use of such equipment must be accomplished by trained personnel in accordance with regulations of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Non-ionizing radiation is produced by laser equipment and electronic microwave equipment. Laser equipment is coming into widespread use for surveying and for alignment of pipelines, tunnels, and structural members. So again, only well-trained employees should be permitted to operate such equipment. OSHA regulations limit the exposure to workers to both laser output and microwave power output. So the workers must be provided anti-laser eye protection when working in areas having a potential exposure to laser light output greater than 5 milliwatt. So 5 milliwatt, not more than 5 milliwatt laser light output should be exposed. Okay, next is the hazard with the toxic materials. So accidentally encounter the toxic materials at any time, particularly on reconstruction projects. Most frequent hazards consist of buried utility lines and underground gases. So every effort must be made to locate and properly protect utility lines during excavation operations. So of course these toxic materials are can occur suddenly, accidentally. Although on the other hand, of course, some of the toxic materials are also on the construction site, but those are the non-toxic materials. That means those are those materials which may be used for some purposes on the construction site, and then those materials may have some signage on their packings. But accidental toxic materials, such as in the buried buried utility lines, may be quite dangerous. So the air in a work area should be tested whenever an oxygen deficiency or toxic gas is likely to be encountered. So emergency rescue equipment such as breathing equipment and lifelines should be provided whenever adverse atmospheric conditions may be encountered. So in order to take control or to get the protection for such a hazard, breathing equipment should be present on the construction site. Hazards related with the heat. Serious heat illness may result when workers are not properly acclimated and protected against the heat. So medical effects range from fatal heat stroke to minor heat fatigue in those situations. It is particularly important to health that the body's water and salt levels are maintained. Heat cramps result when the body's salt level drops too low. Factors that have been found to increase the heat strain experienced by workers include drug consumption, fever from an infection, exposure to low frequency noise, and exposure to environmental gases such as carbon monoxide. Methods for reducing heat effect on workers include the use of mechanical equipment to reduce physical labor requirements, scheduling work for cooler part of the day, use of sun shields, providing cool rest areas. So optimum temperature is about 25 degrees centigrade. Providing a water and salt supply easily accessible to the workers, and the use of proper hot weather clothing. So these are some of the steps which can be taken to avoid the heating effect, adverse heating effect on the workers. On the other hand, another health hazard is about the cold. Extreme cold weather conditions, although not encountered as often as heat conditions, pose essentially opposite problems to those of the hot weather operations. So the human body will acclimate itself to cold as it will do to heat, but the acclimatation period for the cold is much longer. So the medical effects of cold include frostbite, trench foot, and general hypothermia, reduction of core body temperature. So general hypothermia is usually fatal when the body core temperature drops below 65 degree Fahrenheit or 18 degrees centigrade. Military operations have demonstrated that the human beings can successfully perform in low temperatures when they are properly clothed, fed, and acclimated. Okay, so proper clothing is one of the main solution to deal with the cold climate. So thus the major requirements for successful cold weather construction appears to be the provision of adequate clothing and warming areas. The use of bulky cold weather clothing, however, reduces the manual dexterity and may increase the possibility of accidents. So although on the other hand, because if we are protecting ourselves from the cold weather by the use of the bulky clothing, but on the other hand, since these bulky clothing may also hinder the human movement as well, so this may increase the possibility of the accidents as well. So therefore a proper balance between the increase in the possibility of the accidents and the protection from the cold weather should also be considered. Okay, so this was the topic about the construction health and safety, but now we look at the third main topic of this chapter, which is the equipment maintenance. So equipment maintenance is the servicing, adjusting, and repairing of the equipment. So preventive maintenance of the equipment is very important and very useful. So for the preventive maintenance, we need to look at the preventive maintenance indicators. And next we will consider about the equipment maintenance and repair, which is the general maintenance and the repair in addition to the preventive maintenance. So having a proper preventive maintenance plan may reduce the need for general equipment maintenance and repair. The major equipment maintenance and repair. And lastly, we will consider about some of the organizational issues, some of the management issues related with the maintenance. So equipment maintenance is the servicing, adjusting, and repairing of the equipment. This is the definition of the equipment maintenance. All too frequently, operators and supervisors in the field attempt to increase production by operating equipment under load conditions greater than the equipment was designed to handle. So this should not happen. Okay, the equipment should be used for their proper functioning conditions, okay, for which the equipment has been designed. So some of the equipment should not be overloaded or overworked. So the result in those situations, if the equipment is used under the conditions greater than the equipment was designed to handle, then equipment will in those situations will have a premature breakdown with accompanying delays and increase in the costs. So this will ultimately affect the success of the project. Poor preventive maintenance procedures and an efficient repair system will minimize equipment failures and their consequences. So with this, then we can talk about the preventive maintenance. So preventive maintenance is sometimes referred to as PM It is the routine, periodic maintenance and adjustment designed to keep the equipment in the best possible operating condition. So this is, in this way we can define the preventive maintenance, that we want to keep the equipment in the best possible operating condition. So we will do the maintenance, we will do the service of the equipment in a routine manner, in a regular manner. So that will be the preventive maintenance. So primary links in the preventive maintenance chain are the skill of the operator. So first of all, skill of the operator. Operator should be skillful to use the equipment, the manner in which the equipment is used, the proper fuel handling, proper equipment lubrication, and correct periodic adjustment. So if any of the links in this chain fails, the result will be a premature equipment breakdown. So in the preventive maintenance, all of these chains, all of these links in this chain should be properly performed. So equipment manufacturers have developed specific lubrication, servicing and adjustment procedures for each piece of their equipment. So when, for example, if you have some equipment such as an excavator or a crane, each of those equipment will have their equipment manual from their manufacturer, and that equipment manual will be telling you that at what intervals you will have to provide the regular servicing and maintenance to the equipment. So though that schedule should be followed for proper maintenance of the equipment. In these procedures should be carefully followed. So while construction equipment managers and operators have long depended on manual equipment lubrication using hand operated or power grease guns, automatic lubrication systems are now available for most items of the construction equipment. So many newer equipments are now able to have the automatic lubrication system. So that may be very helpful for the system. So some advantages claimed for automatic lubrication system include the following. So what are those advantages? Increased productivity from eliminating the time lost for manual lubrication. So in the manual lubrication, of course, the time will be lost. So we can increase the productivity. Reduced service labor because manual lubrication is no longer needed. So then, of course, we don't need to pay for the labor for the manual lubrication. Extended machine component life as a result of optimum lubrication and less opportunity for dirt to enter the machine during the servicing. So this is also good for the machine itself. Reduced grease consumption, since there is little waste of the grease during the lubrication. Increased safety because mechanics do not have to crawl under or over the equipment to perform the lubrication. So increased safety as well. And it is important to keep dust, dirt and water from entering the engine and other mechanical assemblies for the equipment. So this can be helpful if there is an automatic lubrication system is installed into the machine or the equipment. Okay, now let's talk about the preventive maintenance indicators. So that is, preventive maintenance indicators are conditions which may be readily observed by an equipment manager and provide a guide to the maintenance condition of the equipment. So that means these are those conditions. If we will observe it, then we will say that the equipment may or may not need the maintenance. Okay, so what are those conditions? Following are some of these general conditions. For example, after the equipment has been standing idle for several hours, so check on the ground for any grease, oil or water spots that will indicate the leak. So if you want to judge if there is any leakage, then we can do this step. So another step for the preventive maintenance indicator is the make a visual inspection of the equipment for loose bolts, leaking hoses or seals, and any unusual wear. So if we have these kind of situations in the equipment, then that will be an indication that equipment needs some maintenance and repair. Check blades for holes or dents. Check cutting edges and end bits for excessive wear and loose bolts. On crawler type equipment, check the track for correct tension and loose shoe bolts. Make sure that the radiator is free of debris and that the radiator core openings are clean. So these are some of the examples for the indications that the equipment may need some maintenance. So be sure that fuel, oil, hydraulic fluid and water are in their proper levels. Gauges should be checked for condition and proper operation. Ensure that the air cleaner and pre-cleaner are serviced as required, and check that cables are clean and properly lubricated and that cables are free of kinks and broken strands. So various possible areas have been mentioned over here. This list is of course not complete. There may be several other areas which may be checked for the PM indicators, but the purpose of providing this list is just to see that there is a large variety of areas which can be checked for the indications for the need for the maintenance. Okay, so next is the equipment maintenance and repair. So this equipment maintenance and repair is in addition to the preventive maintenance. So it has been found that freezing equipment components such as backhoe teeth, blade cutting edges, rock drill bits, brake rotors, and engine blocks to a temperature of minus 300 degree Fahrenheit or minus 180 degree centigrade can substantially extend the life of these components. So this is a kind of technique, cryogenic technique. With this technique, one can extend the life of those equipment which have high wear and tear. So this freezing process is called as the deep cryogenic treatment. However, of course, this deep cryogenic treatment will involve some cost. So while the cryogenic treatment increases the cost of treated components, the increased component life often reduces the equipment's overall maintenance and repair costs. So although we will be spending more on this cryogenic treatment, but this will increase the life of the equipment components. And on overall basis, we may be saving more than we will be spending. However, this needs to be checked with some proper economic analysis. So the contractor should run tests to compare the overall cost, including labor and downtime of equipment using treated versus untreated components. So a proper economic analysis of such decisions may be made. Okay, so last topic is the maintenance organization. Routine maintenance and servicing may be performed in the open or at covered job site facility by either the operator or a service team. So servicing can be provided in a covered job site or in the open area, depending on the situation. The servicing is usually performed in the open, except when frequent adverse weather conditions prevail, but service areas should be located away from the haul roads and other sources of dust. Specialized service teams equipped with mobile power lubrication, and fueling equipment have been used most successfully by many contractors. Minor repairs may be performed on the job site by mobile repair teams or at an or at an on-site repair facility. The equipment requiring major repairs is normally brought to an equipment dealer or company shop for repair. So normally for the major repairs we have to go to the equipment dealer and the equipment shop for repair. On large projects, on the other hand, particularly at an isolated location, it may be justified for the establishment of a major repair facility near the job site. And since the supply of repair parts is a frequent problem at all maintenance levels, repair parts stockage policies must be carefully developed based on experience, manufacturers' demand data, and job conditions. Uh, yes, so if the repair parts have to be changed on a regular basis, so there should be a policy or there should be an arrangement for the replacement, for the availability of the replacement parts. Okay, so frequently the stockage and repair by the replacement of assemblies and sub-assemblies will result in a lowering of the total maintenance cost. So if we have a stocks of the repair, stocks of the replacement components and repair facilities at the site, it will often result in the lowering of the total maintenance costs, because if sometimes if the repairs is needed and we have to order those repairs separately from other places, then it may need to spend more in those situations, so rather than stocking it. So frequently the stockage and repair by the replacement of assemblies and sub-assemblies will result in a lowering of the total maintenance cost. So with that, this topic is